you. It does. Okay, so managing staff induction and probation. We can move it forward. So when I was putting this together, I mean, there's lots of different processes and lots of different ways of thinking about it. So my role often is as a sort of development director. So I was trying to sort of, often when I put these sessions together, I'm sort of trying to look at the big picture, really, the sort of, you know, what ultimately are we trying to achieve here? So one of the questions I'm asking, or I ask myself, is, you know, why are we inducting new staff? It's a very simple question, but I think by asking that question, then we know how to sort of aim our offering. So ways of doing this that work best for both us and the new staff member. There are, I've sort of come across in time, sort of induction processes which, you know, work well for the organization, but what was the experience like for the person receiving the induction? Because I think it's as important getting that right as it is getting your message across and your understandings across. And then also, so how are we using our probation process to establish and monitor what I've called achievement landmarks along the route? So that's some of the sort of the things I've sort of chucked into my sort of, you know, cognitive hat, if you like, as I've tried to sort of shape this presentation. So today's session, getting new starters set up efficiently. I had some thoughts about that. So making them feel welcome and part of the team. So orientating them, so to your culture and your values, to your organization and processes. But also to obviously to your clients and services, existing staff, and, you know, including sort of, you know, how do you introduce people? How do you sort of bring people in by shadowing, those sorts of things. The next bit was around training them, making sure they have the knowledge and understanding they need. Mentoring and assessing them to ensure that they are performing as required. And then lastly, seeking feedback from them to make sure your induction process works for them as well as delivers for you. Okay, so that's that sort of checking in to making sure it, you know, it does do what they need it to. So that's sort of things that I'm trying to sort of cover. I will cover those sort of, with reference many ways to sort of things that we do and reasons why we do them. But just because they're things that we do doesn't necessarily mean the things that you do, or that they have to be things that you do. So if you have, and I will be asking questions along the way, different ways of doing things, ways that, you know, things that you think work particularly well, then please feel free to, you know, open up your mic, put up your hand, put stuff in the chat and let us know about it. As we saw from the session, you know, loads of people have, you know, done quite a lot of work, you know, over a good number of years. So, you know, you will have, you know, significant experiences in these areas. So induction is not just about ensuring that your staff are knowledgeable and competent, also about creating an experience where they like coming to work and want to stay. So that, I think, is a sort of is a key point. So yes, we're trying to train people up. Yes, we're trying to make sure that they're aware of key aspects, but also we're trying to make sure that they're happy, that they like their workplace. And it's something that they can feel sort of committed to and wanting to be involved in. So that, I think, you know, those are sort of two key challenges, if you like, for us when inducting staff. Very quickly, I'm just going to go, so, you know, there was a number of services, different service types mentioned, but all our services in some shape or form are coming under sort of CQC regulations. And, you know, CQC, I've just looked at the CLOEs rather than the regulations, but, you know, just what are they saying about sort of staff induction, and what are they coming in and what are they requiring of us? There again, talk about a revamped website. So I gave a shout out for Skills for Care, but actually I don't often give a shout out for CQC, but I think their new way of outlining each of their key lines of inquiry, and how each element is good or outstanding or requires improvement indeed, is actually really good and really accessible. That's the thing I took from it. I think it's a really sort of, they've made it much more of a sort of easy read, if you like. So if you haven't had a look at it, I would say it's worth having a look at. So there's only a few areas really where I think they touch on induction, but this is what I've come up. So the first, Chloe, is the service safe. So S3, how does the service make sure there are sufficient numbers of suitable staff to support people to stay safe and meet their needs? Okay, so that's about, I mean, yes, it's about numbers, but it's also about, suitable staff. So staff have to sort of be, able to meet people's needs effectively and to keep them safe effectively. So within S3, receiving effective training in safety systems, processes and practices. So there's a requirement there to train staff and make sure they're up to speed in order to meet people's needs. Is the service effective? So E2 talks about how does the service make sure that staff have the skills, knowledge and experience to deliver effective care and support? Well, part of their induction is developing those things. Do people have their assessed needs, preferences and choices met by people with the right qualifications, skills, knowledge and experience? Do staff have effective and regular mentorship, support, induction, supervision, appraisal and training? So these are, it's not nebulous as such, but they're not, they don't sort of nail it, 1, 2, 3 in terms of induction, but there is, within their Chloes, there is a requirement that staff are up to speed and they know what they're doing and they're competent at what they're doing. There's also E4, this is about working to, how well do staff, teams and services within and across organisations work together to deliver effective care, support and treatment. So that's, another part of your induction is not only getting staff up to speed, it's also about getting them, collaborative, knowing who to talk to, being member of a team, all those sorts of things. So that is some of the framework that CQC sort of provides, some of the backdrop, if you like, from the regulator. So I'm just starting off because, I mean, we talk about induction as, it's a process that, it starts with, people's first day in the service in many ways. And when we're inducting staff, yes, it's about sort of integrating them and getting them welcoming them, orientating them, but also it's about getting them set up. And I see that sort of that has to happen efficiently. So we've got to make them feel welcome, but we've also got to give them confidence that we are competent as an organisation, and we need to set them up quickly and efficiently. And I think that's a really important thing, that we have sort of tried and tested systems, ways of doing that, and people dedicated to doing that, and making sure that it's a seamless process for people. And an easy process for people. So lists of areas where they need to be set up. This isn't comprehensive. This is just a sort of back of the fag packet stuff. But when they come in very early on in the system, we would be looking to make sure that they get their contract and that they sign it. They get the bank details and they put on the payroll. That they now understand the timesheet and clocking in system. We don't do a clocking in system, but other organisations do. Domcare quite often operates in that sort of way. They know when they're going to be paid, they know how they're going to be paid. Their ID badge, making sure they've got a photo taken for that. We have sort of little messaging groups, if you like, that we use. So other staff need to go onto the IT system. So there's different sort of IT communication infrastructure that they will need access to, and they will need to be set up on. So that they're in the loop. Sometimes they need equipment, whether that's keys or phones, those sorts of things. They need to know who's who in the organisation. So we provide people with a copy of our sort of like a structure chart, and picked mug shots of the sort of offending individuals. Copy of or access to employees handbook. Have a personal file set up, and make sure they've got access to a policy and procedure manual, and any other key documentation. Now that's not, I'm not selling that as everything, but those are the types of things that we have to make sure that we're sort of on it in terms of sort of, making sure that people have got what they need. I don't know if there's anything else that you would sort of want to shout out and say, well, what about this? Or this is something that is important for us. But if there is, then, by all means, add it. That's great.
When would you suggest you start talking about the values of the organisation?
Before it, but at interview.
At interview time.
Yes, I think so.
Values are quite important, aren't they, of the actual organisation?
But yes, they're crucial. They're crucial, and I think that's. I mean, I talk a bit more in this about culture, but yes, they are. And I think, I mean, has anyone got any sort of? Are people doing values-based recruitment? Is that something that people have sort of taken on board and are moving towards? And if so, have you got any sort of experiences you want to share? I mean,
we have a value sheet that we offer out at interview, so that people can circle the most important values to them, and then we open up the conversation around the centre values. Okay. At that stage.
Yeah. I think that's quite. In some ways, it's about. You haven't got a lot of time. It's trying to keep it focused and trying to keep it simple. We have something similar. We have it's not, I wouldn't call it a workbook, but it's a little bit like a workbook. So an exercise that they do, again, when they select the most important values and then talk to us about why they've chosen those ones. There's also things called values cards, which is, you can have a pack and then people can select out important ones, or ones they agree with, ones they disagree with. Out of the ones they agree with, what are the most important things? So there's a number of ways, I think, trying to find out about people's values and having conversations with them around their values. So, I mean, this is sort of, if you like, I would say sort of more practical tasks. That's what I've sort of focused on here, and just making sure that you make that as efficient as possible. Because what you don't want, you can have the greatest values in the world, you can have the most welcoming team, you can have lots of really positive, you can have the most responsive training, but if you don't set them up on payroll, you know what I mean, you can have a problem. So I mean, these things sort of go hand in glove, I would say. So, so making new staff feel welcome, I think that's a sort of really, really important thing. And this is hopefully all of us, when a new member of staff comes through the door, we should, but often we are very requiring of that new member of staff. So you would hope that we're all utterly pleased to see them. So just a sort of little bit of sort of background, sort of induction and staff turnover. So a bit of, sort of context, if you like. So Skills for Care estimate the staff turnover rate in 2020, 2021 for all job roles was 28.5%. And that for frontline carers, frontline care workers, that was as high as 34.4%. Just to put that in a bit of context for the, work as a whole, all across all sectors, staff turnover averages more like 15%. So in social care, we are seeing staff turnover rates which are, close to and at times in excess of double what the national average is. And Sally mentioned Neil Eastwood. I will mention Neil Eastwood as well. I think he's, someone who's got some really helpful things to say. But we know, from his work and from other work that staff turnover is highest during the first year of employment. And actually in his masterclass, he's got someone saying that actually it's about 80% in that first year, 80% of it happens in the first 90 days. Okay, so it's really, really important that those first weeks and months, if you want to get everything spot on for new staff, if you're going to sort of encourage you to retain them. I mean, people can, all of this, people can, you've got different views, you can all, anyone can chip in. And I
think it's a good idea to have a buddy system set up as well.
Well, I'm coming on to that, yeah. But
okay.
Yes, I think it has its merit. We don't quite do a buddy system. Be interested if people do a buddy system. But but we do something which serves that purpose, if you like. So this is, again, this is slightly pre-induction, but selecting stayers, as I've called them, starts, before induction. Does anyone have an employee referral scheme? So we've introduced one of these. This is one of the things that Neil Eastwood.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. How do you find it, Leah?
The uptake was a bit slow.
Yes.
I think it was difficult to sort of get it going, but now yeah, people are using it and it's working for us.
Good.
So.
And I think that's what one of his. So in his masterclass, it's having it isn't enough. It's actually about promoting it and sort of create what he describes as sort of creating some buzz around it. And I think we've started one. I don't think we've got the buzz going quite yet, but we have now. We're on the third person who we're rewarding as a consequence of referring a member of staff.
On the chat, Gail is saying that they also have a buddy system.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Referral system. Yeah, we use Care Friends.
Yes.
And the staff members can earn points, what they can turn in money.
Yes.
And also, like, there's like if they go for an interview, they get certain amount, and if they start, they get certain amount, and if they kind of get through the probation, they get more. So it's quite nice. It did kind of pushed up our recruitment a little bit.
Yeah.
So share on Facebook and whatever from their app, job adverts.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, because he's created sort of almost like a game, hasn't he, with that app? The more you engage in it, the more you get. So
and there's quite a competition between our staff members, like who's earning more points, who's earning more.
Okay, well, that's part of that's the buzz, isn't it?
We use that one at Care Friends.
Yeah, that's part of the buzz, isn't it? That sort of getting people actively interested in it. So just in terms of employee referral scheme, just sort of some of the reasons it's sort of felt to be the sort of referrals from existing staff are meant to be the sort of most effective at getting sort of people who stay. So that they tend to refer staff who they think will fit in.
Sally's dropped into the chat the link for Care Friends. If anybody would like to take it.
Thank you. So also in those conversations, so they're looking at people who will fit in, but they're also having accurate conversations with them about what it's actually like. So there's not, it's not necessarily not getting a rose-colored picture. They're getting a sort of, this is the job. Are you interested? And also when they do start, they've actually got somebody within the company who they already know who can help that process can support them and help them integrate. The other thing which comes up on Neil's masterclass, which I think is quite interesting and worthy of consideration around sort of getting stayers. So he was suggesting that we have, not all frontline staff, but frontline staff are involved on the interview panel. And one of the reasons he was saying this, and he gave a sort of case study whereby they measured the numbers from a manager who was desperate to get a new members of staff in to sort of to cover shifts, and a support worker, a colleague who would be working alongside that member of staff and would be impacted by them daily. And what the numbers were showing was that the staff member, the colleague, was more choosy about who they selected, and when that went through the system, so more people who selected the job stayed, past their probation, stayed for a significant period of time, whereas just sort of getting, if you like, a bum on a seat, which the manager was more focused on doing, actually they didn't stay. And also what he's suggesting as part of that process, the interview process, that you can give them a bit of time together. So if you've got someone that might be working alongside this new member of staff, give them 5-10 minutes just to have a chat, start building their relationship, you know, and the person can ask questions about, you know, what it's actually like. So, I mean, it's not a, you know, it's a slight digression, but I think in many ways it's, you know, that's part, you know, if we can get people who are more likely to stay, then we're more likely to sort of, for them to be successful in their induction process and probation process. So just, yeah, sort of open question, open arms. So what are you doing to ensure that new staff are made to feel welcome and part of your team?
Anybody on the chat?
Well, I'll have to tell you what we're doing.
Should I kind of raise my hand before I start?
Yeah.
No, carry on.
Yeah, no, if you've got.
Okay, so our senior team, so first of all, we do site induction, and we do have like a full day induction from our senior management as well.
Yeah.
Senior management team. Then we have a minimum of 2-week shadowing period. And we do have like reviews. Obviously, in the first 3 months, every new starter will have monthly supervisions, but anyways, we are there for them. They have a supervisor who will kind of help them. We have a welcome to Silvercare like booklet, what as they go along they fill together, and the supervisor is helping. We also do like reviews after 3 weeks, after 6 weeks, after 3 months, and after 6 months. That's the probation.
Yeah.
And yeah, we are always there for them, really.
Yeah.
From the management down to everyone. So, and obviously this staff team is really welcome, and it all depends on the quarter, is it? So how they mentor the new starters as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else got any?
We send out a 6-week plan with the contract as well, so that there's an understanding of exactly what happens on each day, of who the new person will be meeting on which day, who they'll be shadowing when, and the training times around that as well. So
I think that's a good tip, actually, because if they have
very
that right at the beginning and they can, yeah, so it's all sort of planned out for them, I think that can really sort of help people.
Also, sorry, we I forgot to say, we make sure that where it's possible they have all the training before they actually start.
Yeah.
They have maybe, so if they are really new to the care, we make sure they have an understanding of what is happening and you know what
Yes,
they
of
get
course.
into.
Yes, absolutely. Okay.
Now, can I ask you, if you're giving training before they start, what do you do? Is that, do you pay them for that, or how do you go about that?
Yes, so Silvercare is paying every start, you know, if they do online training before they start, it's 3 hours per training. They get paid. If it's face-to-face training, they get paid for the whole time what they're on training. We have like quite a few like full day trainings, and they get paid for that. Yeah,
that's good. Thank you.
it's okay.
So just, I mean, Sally mentioned it earlier, but the support. So one of the things I'm touching on is the skills for care. Some sort of section put on the webpage around supportive induction. So they're talking about the need for supportive induction, and that it helps new team members fit comfortably and safely into your organisation. I think that has to be one of your aspirations. Reduces the risk of them feeling out of their depth, and increases their desire to come to work. So I put here, induction has to be proactive. It's an investment of time and energy by you and your existing staff. But then by attracting and keeping new staff, collectively, you're all going to benefit. So, I mean, one of the things I put here, so how are you making sure that your existing staff aren't operating as a clique and freezing out new staff? Because I think that can happen at times, particularly if you've got, well, you know, it can be, just the reality of it, it can be very difficult for a new staff member to come into a well-established team. And what you can find is one of the reasons for high staff turnover is that they don't feel they can break in to that team effectively. That does happen. That is a thing. So I just wondered, is that something you've ever experienced? Is that something you're having conversations with staff about? Anyone got any thoughts or comments around that?
Personally, I always tell my staff team that they're going to massively contribute to the team player that the new starter is going to be.
Yeah.
So that if they don't give someone a good induction, they're ultimately going to have to say something about it later down the line.
Yeah.
So if they understand that from the beginning, hopefully they can onboard people a lot better or well.
Yeah.
Or as well as possible.
So what I'm just writing down, but it's important that they understand both their responsibilities and the benefits, isn't it? But I think sometimes you need to, I'm saying sometimes, I think it's important to have that conversation. Often it's an unnecessary conversation because they'll get that and they'll do that naturally. But sometimes they won't.
Yeah, I think it's just a regular reminder I do a few times a year during team meetings. Not that we have starters all the time, but when we do.
Yes, for sure. It's sort of so for you, it's in the mix, isn't it? It's making sure that they're part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Yeah, it's a team effort. It's not just about me. It's not just about the new starter. They're a massive contributor to the the support worker colleague that they are going to get.
Yeah. So,
and I think it's important that they understand that it is part of their responsibility as well.
Yeah, no, thank you, Catherine. I think I agree.
Also, what I would add, what I learned from my experience is having in the supervision that conversation, you've done a really good job. Look how she's, blooming and how confident she is or he is.
Yeah.
And this is part your job as well by mentoring them really well.
Yeah.
A little praise can go a long way.
Yeah.
Mick, Natasha has said on the chat that pairing existing staff with new staff helps to build rapport.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, yes, I mean, I talk a little bit about buddying, but I'd be interested in sort of people's thoughts about that. But yeah, I think it does, having somebody who's there to look out for them, to be the person that they can sort of call upon, to show them the ropes, all those sorts of things. I think it's got to be a positive way of helping people feel included and getting them up to speed sooner rather than later.
I also think it's important when you've got new staff coming on board that they know who else they should be going to for help and guidance. Not just the buddies, not just the existing staff, but to know where to go for, should I speak to the management? Because when new staff start, they're in awe of everybody. Everybody else is already there, knows the ropes. So I think it helps to sort of point out what to expect and who to go to.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we have elements of that in our sort of employee handbook, but yes, I agree. So, I mean, we've talked a bit around buddy systems. Somebody says they do one. We sort of do. We don't call it a buddy system, but it's that point of contact that you're just talking about, Karen. Whereas, so they do know who to go to, and that person is a sort of frontline manager who sort of has the people skills really to make people feel at ease. They have the knowledge of the company to orientate them effectively, and and they're able to. They know the answers to, I guess, the majority of their questions, and if they don't know the answer, they know somebody who does. So, any more comments around sort of buddy systems? So I think the point that was made, having somebody, whatever you call them, who is a sort of go-to person, someone who shows people the ropes, I think is, giving somebody that responsibility, I think can be really helpful.
No comment on the chat at the moment. If you want to say something, you can use the reaction button to put your hand up if you're not sure. And then we will always come back into you if you,
Yeah, that's fine. Or you can just shout out.
yeah,
So,
whatever.
so yeah.
You're welcome to join in.
So another thing in, I mean, people are joining in, and that's nice. It's nice actually. I much prefer a sort of, you know, rather than me just sitting here delivering content, actually sort of having the conversation, because there's things that have come out of different ways of doing things that actually enrich, you know, our understanding of you know, induction and probation, and those things come from you, not from me. So my job in some ways is to provide the framework, and your job is to fill it in. So just another sort of skills for care resource, which I found and quite liked, is a sort of just a buddying and mentor. It's basically a sort of just a list of buddying qualities and a list of mentoring qualities, the difference between the two. But I thought that was quite useful, quite helpful, actually. So, you know, whoever it is who's doing the sort of looking after, I think, you know, there is value in assigning that role to a dedicated person. We have what we call an induction mentor. It could be, you know, a colleague who's a buddy, either way, but they're there to sort of introduce them to people, whether it's the colleagues, the clients they're going to be working with. It could be other key people in the organization. We have a number of different services. It's been more difficult in COVID, but actually one of their jobs was actually to go around services with them and introduce them. Yeah, so they sort of actually knew the geography of the services, and also the people in the services. They just got a sense and a feel for the different services that we provide. So also things like, you know, introducing them, help them with systems. So things like the timesheets that they have to complete, things like the rota and how it works, those sorts of things. That induction mentor, that's their responsibility. And they're a friendly point of contact to answer questions and address any concerns. Okay, so the next bit I'm moving on to is sort of orientating new staff to your organisation. So we've made them welcome, we've set them up, we've made them welcome, and now we're sort of trying to point them in the right direction, if you like. So thinking through this, I think the stuff around making sure that they are aware and you actively support them become aware of your culture and your values. They need to know those, of your organizational processes, and obviously your clients and your services. So I don't know, is there anything else that you, in your sort of orientation process, that you make sure that new starters are actively aware of? Again, this isn't necessarily a definitive list. I just sort of broke it down into those categories. So, okay, so in that, I'm not majoring on values, but I am talking about culture, because I think, I think it's a different discussion, values, but I think your values inform your culture. So your workplace culture. So what words, do you have words that you'd use to describe this? If someone was to say to you, say 3 things about your, to describe your workplace culture, what would you come up with?
Yeah.
Supportive, safe, family environment, transparent. Yeah.
Amber said transparent as well. Yeah.
I've just come up with 3, and I've just come up with friendly, supportive, overworked.
Amber's also added friendly to her list as well, so transparent and friendly.
Yeah.
Overworked, everybody's in that same situation, aren't they?
Yeah, but I think one of the things I'll go through a bit of stuff. I'll wait a bit to see if anybody else has got stuff coming in, and I'll go through some of the stuff that Neil says. But what I'm trying to get people to be aware of is that what is your, if someone's walking into your workplace and you're inducting them and you're wanting them to stay, what's the whole experience going to be like for them? And because that's your culture ultimately, and some of that is really positive front foot stuff, and some of that's reactive, trying to sort out the mess stuff, isn't it? And
Natasha's actually put 3 words. She said care,
mhm,
integrity, and quality.
lovely, yeah.
I'd actually
No overworked in Natasha's, I see. Well, that's
welcoming.
good.
I think welcoming needs to be in there, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I think it's worth having a think about this, and what's coming out is some very nice words, some very positive things that can and should describe us and be the way we operate. But also, what I'm encouraging people to do is not just sort of blank out the fact that it's a difficult time in social care at the moment. It's probably as challenging as it's ever been, and we're wanting, as part of the solution, to get new staff to come into that and help sort it out. So there is, there's some other stuff as well.
Rewarding is another word, isn't it?
Yes. When the list isn't 3, is it? I mean, the list is
it's massive.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It can be.
Did anybody else think of another word? Anybody else want to enter? It's a game.
Yep. Prize for the best word, isn't it?
Oh, reassuring. That's a good one.
Yeah. Well, these are great words, actually. They're great sort of aspects of cultures. If you've got that, you've got a fighting chance with a new member of staff. If you're welcoming, you've got a fighting chance with a new member of staff. If you're supportive.
Eva says open door culture.
Yeah, again, you've got a fighting chance with a new member of staff, haven't you? So one of the things, so this is Neil's recruitment masterclass, and he's referenced the following 4 factors that influence company culture. He said the leadership style of your chief executive, your leader, core values that guide your decisions and your actions, so they can come from the chief executive, but they'll also come from all of us. They're sort of embedded within the organization. The behaviors you expect, and I'll talk a bit about that in a moment, but also he's like the behaviors you permit. And it's my underlining, but the point that we're making is the behaviors you permit, you promote. Which I agree with, actually. I think if people know they can get away with something, then they do, and then somebody else gets away with it, and all too quickly it can start, a culture can start setting because you sort of, you turned a blind eye, or you downplayed it, or you were too busy, those sorts of things. So there can be positive and negative aspects to workplace culture, and I'm just have a think about it. I guess that's what I'm saying. I mean, I think we all like to and have very positive aspects of our workplace culture, but also I think we're probably all overstretched at times. People are overworked at times. People are tired at times. So it's those sorts of things that just to also be aware of. It's the whole picture that new staff are going to walk into.
If you cut corners, then new member of staff will pick up that bad habit, and it'll escalate, won't it?
It's all, and what are you inducting the new staff member into? And I know some of this is, it's not high level, but it's something to think about, isn't it? Because actually, if you want everything, it's a Herculean effort and a focused task and at times a difficult thing to do, to keep, people absolutely all the time doing everything, at a sort of at the level you want it to be done at. So how you highlight, so this is about highlighting your company's expectation and cultures to new starters. So just looking at, I found this chart and I quite liked it. So, and it sort of it's like a Venn diagram with culture at the center. So vision and values are 2 elements of what established culture. I wanted to talk a bit more about expectations and standards, because I think they are a part of what establishes culture. And the other thing it's got here is emotional aptitude. So I guess it's, what you and other people bring to the table in relation to your emotional aptitude also determines what your culture is. So do you have what, I mean, we've talked a bit about processes, talked a bit about training. Do you have sort of, I mean, we talked a bit about values, but do you have frameworks, anything that sort of the way we do things here is like this? Does anybody have those sorts of tools?
Guided by policy.
Mm-hmm.
If you're guided by policy, that's your rule book, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is how we do things.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Oh, sorry. I think I think I've just used the wrong reaction.
Oh,
You're
yeah,
waving
no,
there.
no,
Yeah.
it's
Oh, I
fine.
don't know what's going on now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what we did in our team, because we're quite a small team and everybody's lone working.
Yeah.
So what we did is we sort of like, we've got the organization values and everybody has their induction, but we as a team sat down and thought, okay, what do we do? Like, what's the essence of what we do?
Mm-hmm.
So we've got like two things and it's really clear for everyone, so they can base like all their decisions against those two things.
Yeah.
And it just makes it sort of like that collective, but we did that together with all the staff. We sort of came
Nice.
up with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay. So between yourselves, you
Does
work.
that make sense? Yeah.
Yes, it does. It
Yeah,
does. And
okay.
I think it's a good exercise as well, as long as what you come up with is aligned with what your organization wants from you.
Yeah, of course the values of the organization, like the
Yeah.
starting point, but the thing
Yeah.
is, sometimes, because we do in our organization, we have residential, we have outreach, we have so many different things that we do, that we sort of like had to streamline it
Yes.
just a little bit,
Yeah.
specifically to like our support workers.
Yeah. Because of the nature of because you're an outreach lone working type team.
Yeah, and because like I think when you're in a residential setting, at least from what I can see, so if you're in a residential setting, you've got other staff around you and you sort of like, because we have lots of residential settings, it's kind of clear, but I find with outreach, it's like you're commissioned for different things for different clients. Like, do I get involved with financial support? Do I not? Like, there's so many gray areas, and then it varies from person to person and council to council. So it was kind of like just to give them sort of like a handle on what is it that, if you don't know, like this is what we are supposed to be doing. Like, this is the essence of what, you know, we do. So you have like a red line throughout. Or it's red.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's clear. So
Yeah.
it's applying your company's values and expectations to your particular type of working.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. I mean, you mentioned policies and procedures, which I think is which we have as well. We sort of found, I mean, it's a bit dry, I would say, but having a comprehensive employee handbook is like really useful. And I've put quite a lot of time and effort to getting that sort of to a reasonable level. It's pretty thorough. And it's a sort of go-to resource for new staff, but it's also a resource for managers. It's sort of a reference resource around, you know, agreed working practice within the organization. So in many, covers all sorts of things, but many aspects of it is sort of, it's like it's a précis of relevant policies and procedures. The other thing which we have, which I think can help and is part of our, so it is part of our induction requirement for staff to familiarize themselves with our employees handbook, but it's also part of their induction to familiarize themselves with our service user handbook as well, because that's actually, it's laid out in simple terms, and it informs service users and their families what they should expect from our service, and it's in sort of, I would say, easy English. It's pictorial. It's designed to be I know, clear and concise, let us say, and you know, it's written for the service user and their families, but equally it tells the staff what they're meant to be delivering or needing to be delivering.
Mick, do you revisit that handbook, or do you just at induction and then leave it for the staff to go through, or do you sort of once every 6 months or something? Or?
It's not once every 6 months, no, but it is something that's picked up as part of our induction and probation sort of process. Somebody talked about the 3 weeks and the 6 weeks, and we have a similar, so it fits in there.
That's good.
The other thing that we've got, which, I mean, this came out of us sort of assuming that people understood how to answer a telephone, just for instance, and finding out that they didn't necessarily, or assuming, you know, people knew how to, I don't know, record something, and they didn't, apparently. Some did, but, you know, there wasn't, you know, that assumption was an inaccurate assumption. So we spent some time putting together some service standards, and these are things that I would be willing to share if they were helpful to people. And I'm just going to go through them sort of in a potted version. So we've got 12 of them. I'm just going to I'm just pulling out 3 to start with. So one around staff attitudes and behaviours, one around respect and person-centered approaches, one around teamwork and communication. So I just selected those because, you know, all of those are sort of in very much induction-based stuff. I mean, we use it all. We've also got professional development, personal care, nutrition, hydration, confidentiality and sharing information, record keeping, health and safety, medication, cleanliness, housework, dealing with complaints, raising concerns and safeguarding. Okay, and as much as possible, so when we put those together, part of our exercise was to go through the care certificate and to align our service standards to, if you like, the teachings of the care certificate. But, and it's a big but, the focus of that piece of work, whilst it was referenced the care certificate, it was focused on the way things are done around here. Okay, so it was about, it wasn't a generic understanding of care, it was about our working culture and our working practices. And because that's what we wanted to be inducting our staff in. And in all these standards, they're not reach for the sky standards, they're not gold standards. They're as much as anything about promoting common sense and doing the basics well. Because if people have the right attitude and behaviours, if they, you know, are working effectively as a team and communicating well, if they are respectful and delivering effective person-centered care, then we're doing what we need to be doing. Okay, so that was the approach, and I'm just going to go through one, just the headlines really, just to sort of give you an idea of the sort of things that it covers. So I've just chosen teamwork and communication, but all of these I could do similar with. So, you know, part of it's, you know, section 1, establishing positive working relationships with your team colleagues. You know, there's more than just that line in there, but there's not much, you know, a couple of paragraphs, you know, just a little bit of a concise, this is what we expect of you. Similar around team working, so working together. Stuff around the company's communication mechanism. So all this is inducting staff. We use this as a key part of our induction. So what are our communication mechanisms? Where do you find them? What's our expectation in terms of you using them? Attending meetings, what meetings do we hold? You know, which ones do you need to attend? How would we like you to conduct yourself when you're in a meeting? The notes of the meeting, communicating information to others. So, you know, I've got here, don't assume, keep it simple, but, you know, there'll be stuff in here around both those things, but, you know, be clear, be concise, you know, be legible, distinguish fact from opinion. You know, not rocket science, big, you know, but those sorts of things would be included there when you're receiving information from others. And so, you know, stuff about listening, you know, keeping yourself informed, so about reading and making sure that you do that. Again, I put in answering the telephone. I mean, I won't tell you all how to answer a telephone, but we do tell people what we expect, you know, including, you know, take the message, write it down, make sure it gets to the relevant person. And don't go what when you pick up the phone. Conducting handovers, planning and organising. Yeah, so each of those just have a short section. We've got 12 standards. Each of them have got, you know, lots of sections, and each section has got, you know, a little bit of concise, you know, not gold standard, but basic, you know, we expect you to do this. So it's very followable, if you like. It's not sort of, you know, highfalutin stuff. It's very practical advice, very clear about what we expect.
And just to say, Sally's put a useful link on the chat about some resources she helped to develop, contextualizing the induction care certificate.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Sally. Yeah, and if people want some of those standards, that if it's helpful to people to just to see that approach, then I'm happy to share that, because it is, you know, it's a fundamental resource that we use to establish our working culture.
I actually find people don't like to answer the phone because they don't know what they're going to receive from the other end.
Yeah.
And therefore how it sort of, they become a little bit shy of answering. But I think if you can actually encourage them to do so, it actually includes them in the actual whole of the organization.
Yeah.
I think it's a good practice.
Yeah. Well, we sort of they have to, you know, I mean, it's part of their job at times to answer the phone if the phone's going in their service and they, you know, it needs answering. So part of the induction, as well as the sort of the standards, if you like, is around, you know, this is all about orientation, getting to know clients and services. So creating space so that new staff get to sort of, you know, spend time with, talk to, get a feel for some of the people they'll be supporting and caring for. So part of this, we talked briefly about shadowing. We have a sort of 2-week shadowing process. We have at times we extend that. It depends, but if we feel that somebody would benefit from further shadowing, then that does happen sometimes. And also alongside that, it's not just about the, you know, it's about, you know, a lot of what they need to understand is sort of documented, whether it's in care plans or protocols or risk assessments. So it's trying to make the space for them to, you know, read those documents, digest those documents, and if they've got any, you know, issues or queries, whatever, talk to their manager about those documents, or, you know, or their buddy or somebody, so that they can sort of make sense of them and they're clear at the end of that process exactly what's required. The other thing that we've done, I don't know if this is a sort of, so we used to have an induction tick list, we called it, and we go through, and this is where the stopcock is, and this is where this is, and this is where that, and, you know, this is the care plan for so and so. And actually what we found is that there was lots of ticks, but nobody, then we asked, somebody then rang up, you know, 3 weeks later saying, where's the stopcock? How do I turn the electricity back on? Those sorts of things. So our induction process was good for the moment that it happened, but actually staff weren't retaining it and they didn't have a reference resource to go and find. And that we just thought, well, this is a silly way of doing it. Why don't we put together a reference resource for them to use in the services? And actually, if they need to find out, it's a sort of quick read, you know, sort of go-to resource to find out what they need to know. So we put those together. And just some of the things, so organizational contacts, the managers in that service, core team members, staffing profile, shift patterns, you know, then there's a pen picture of each service user. And what we tried to do is, it's those things from a manager's perspective. Actually, they need to know that, and they need to know that that person doesn't mix well with that person, or that person really likes this, or you shouldn't do that with this person. So it's those sorts of, you know, stuff that the manager keeps in their head, information that we try to include there. People's daily routines, medication times, you know, where paperwork's found, where particular folders are. So where's the visitors book, where's the COSH folder, you know, where's the COSH cabinet, where's the fire equipment kept, you know, where the torches, spare keys, you know, where's the electricity meter. So you get the picture. I won't necessarily have to go for everyone, but rather than having to ring us up at 3 o'clock in the morning to switch the fuse, they can actually just go to the resource and they'll tell them where it is, sort of thing. It isn't just about saving us at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's just having the information to hand available that they need to know. So it's designed to help them as much as it is to help us. I won't go through everything that's in there, but just some of the protocols as well. And that's
really useful. Really useful. That's really useful. Really useful.
I think it's quite a good template, and I'm happy. I mean, I'd have to anonymize it and take bits up, but I'm certainly happy to include a copy with the headers, if that was any useful to people. Because, you know, actually where your stopcock is totally different to where ours is, so that information is no use to you. But a list of the things that, you know, I've got some pictures in there, and the list of the things that you'd want to put in there. Okay, so that's sort of orientation. So what we done, set up, welcoming, orientation. So staff training. So the question I asked myself here, so training new starters, what are we trying to achieve here? And I'm happy to sort of chuck that out as a question to people. So why? What are we doing when we're training our new staff?
Anybody want to come in? I think you. I was going to say. Oh, go on. Sorry, Mick.
No, it's all right. I mean, quite often when I do all of this sort of stuff, I do ask myself quite often in my thinking, the fundamental fun, you know, what are we doing this for? And then actually from that point, I then sort of work from that point. And I think what I put here, I put training should not be just about ticking a box, it should be about staff gaining and retaining the necessary understandings.
Yeah.
And if anyone else has got anything to...
Making sure they feel competent to complete their job.
Yes.
With this, massively reducing their anxiety.
So it's a competence and a confidence thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's absolutely right. And I'm not sure that all training necessarily delivers that. But yes, I think that is your aspiration. Do people take people's learning styles into account? Is training a sort of one size fits all from our perspective?
Shouldn't be.
It's a thought, isn't it? I mean, I don't. Yeah, we could have it as a rhetorical question, but I often think we don't necessarily take people's learning styles into account. And then maybe if we taught somebody in a different way, that they would be more effective at it. If they have, you know, depends on their learning style, but we don't necessarily know what their learning styles are. So there's something around that. I've got to what degree are you using e-learning? And I think there's I'm not a great, well, our staff tell us they don't like e-learning. And I hear them, and we try and support them around that, but we still use e-learning. But the question for me, they're saying, and I see it at time, is that they may gain momentarily what they need to pass the test, but you ask them about deprivation of liberty safeguards 3 months later, and they don't know. They say, what are those, sort of thing. So it's not necessary. It's very well, it's cost effective, and it's flexible in its deployment. It's got lots of positives for us as an organization, but you know, the end user experience, I think at times is limited.
Mick, can I take you back to learning styles? Can I? Yeah. So what do you think? I mean, when you first meet the person, you're not going to know what their learning styles are. Would you be fair in asking them, or do you think you should take them through a sort of like a little test that identifies what they are? I
mean, I will talk about it briefly in a bit, but we have we do the latter. It's not just that, it's just for a bit of fun, you know. But actually there's some exercises that we ask people to do which helps us understand who they are and how they are, and then we can share information about ourselves in relation to those as well. So I think that's, yes, you'd have to find out what their learning style is. So e-learning, I think, you know, it's in the mix. It's part of, you know, a sort of a modern induction, I would say. But I think, you know, so are we doing lots of e-learning? To what degree are you using interactive training, whether that's either face-to-face, which I think is the ultimate, or, you know, or like this sort of, you know, virtual training. So that's another area. And to what degree are you using training workbooks? And following those up, you know, we use those, but following them up with one-to-one or group discussions. So people, and so I'm in Wiltshire, and they're doing a sort of local authority comes to inspect you framework. And one of their things was that they didn't want to see an over-reliance on e-learning. So that's the first time I've actually seen that from either CQC or from a local authority. I think there's a recognition that it's, we can be over-reliant upon it. So I don't know if anyone's got any thoughts around any of that. If you do, now's time to share.
Yeah, we've just recently started joined up a training matrix, which is e-learning.
Yeah.
Just after having 2 years of Zoom trainings.
Yeah.
There's some nappy trainings and stuff that are face to face, but the matrix is designed to fit in so not all people are taken out of a service on one day, so that people can dip in and out of it and work their ways through it. And there's been some people, like talking about learning styles, some people have found it quite difficult, some people have found it really easy. So we've adapted rotas to pair up, and also added on like an extra hour to the team meetings monthly, so that we can have a group session around some of the ones that people find challenging. But
that's
it's still
nice
very new.
idea.
So yeah.
I mean, I think we have to use all of these things at our disposal, don't we? And I think it's just about but it's going back to is this about putting somebody through some training, or is this about actually getting them to learn what they need to know as a consequence of the training? And I think I think as long as we find different ways of making sure the latter happens, that's fine. And it could be, we do e-learning, I think we over-reliant, we mix it up, but it's in the mix.
Sally's got her hand raised, Mike.
Sally.
No, I just wanted to contribute, Mick, with the theme around assessing people's learning needs. One of the challenges I consistently hear about is people who use the Skills for Care certificate workbooks that people can't fully complete, people can't get through it, they're failing induction. But yeah, it's just to stress that those workbooks are there, but they're just a resource. They don't have to be used. But this is where thinking about someone's learning needs and styles really comes into it. They can be adapted. We see a lot of organisations develop their own workbooks. How can knowledge be transferred adequately from some of that e-learning people are doing, and how can it be adapted? So you might be able to have a discussion with the worker if they're not confident with reading and writing to get through the workbook. Just to contribute that, Mick.
Thank you. So the other side of this, so that it's your mechanism, your vehicle for delivering training is one thing, but also it's about making, there's quite a growing requirement for mandatory training, but also there's specialist training. So if you're supporting somebody with epilepsy or dementia or all sorts of, some diabetes and other health conditions, how are we making sure that they're receiving those trainings as well in a timely manner? Often with mandatory trainings, we can either put them on a course or get them to do e-learning or something sort of right at the outset, really. But if they're then going to be working in a service where there's people are having seizures, or then are we making sure, or there's mental health support needs or whatever, are we making sure that those trainings are available at the time they need them as well? So that's another thing. We're talking about induction, we're talking about training as part of induction. So are we just getting them through their mandatory training, or are we also doing that but making sure that where they have specialist knowledge, where they need specialist knowledge, that they're getting that as well? So one of the challenges we face is basically we had a number of our trainings were, I would describe as generic trainings, and were useful, but they were it was trying to, how do we get that training how do we get the staff to understand or utilize their understandings from that training and apply it in the particular workplace? And we've done this with 2 now. So we've gone in with health and safety training. Our sort of refresher health and safety training covers health and safety, but also we have like a face-to-face session where we say, right, COSH in this service, what's the deal? Food safety here, what do you do? Fire, where, so they're applying that learning to a setting. if you like, because that's where they need to be utilizing that learning. And we do something similar with sort of challenging behavior, not the sort of the PBS, but the more sort of escalation, de-escalation, those sorts of things about, okay, in this context with these clients, you know, what works, what doesn't work, how do we make sure that this person, you know, doesn't go off baseline. So we're taking it out of a theoretical, you know, context and applying it to specific services. So we can't always, I will say in terms of induction, we can't always do that in due time, you know, before they start work, but that is one of the ways that we're trying to make staff embed their knowledge, or help staff embed their knowledge. We're also, so the other thing we're using is training workbooks. I quite like training workbooks. So we do these here, quality, diversity and human rights and data security and protection. They're for frontline staff. We've got a whole range for managers as well. We've got another one for frontline staff on medication. Again, we want, like e-learning, we can deploy these as and when we need to. And whilst each of these topics, they're designed to promote a generic understanding, they're also aligned to our policies and procedures. So in terms of, you know, we're trying to get people to understand how we do things here. That's, I would say, the sort of the focus of our induction, rather than just getting them to do, you know, a series of exercises that sort of, you know, complete a framework. So I said we do use e-learning. It's effective. We can deploy it when we want. Staff don't have to wait to do a course. They don't overly like it, and they tell us that. So we try and sort of mix it up a bit, and we try and supplement it. So we've got and I'm happy to share this as well. It's a workbook, basically. It's a series of questions. So it's what we think they need to know. And then it's got answers that, you know, they can ask questions which relate to the content of the workbook. So it's very focused and to the point resource. So you can go on training for safeguarding, let us say. I know e-learning might take you 2 hours, something like that. They do the e-learning, but actually the section on safeguarding in here might be, you know, 4 sides of A4, 10 points. This is what you absolutely 100% need to know. Same with mental capacity. So, you know, so short, sharp and to the point, I would say. So covers vision and values, duty of care, delivering a person-centered service, mental capacity, consent, record keeping, confidentiality, whistleblowing. We've got another one of those workbooks on whistleblowing, responding to concerns, complaints. You see the list, yeah? I mean, stuff that we all should be familiar with. So short, sharp resource, giving a sort of a nutshell, if you like, of what they need to know. So they'll do relevant e-learning, and not all of these, but a number of them. And then they'll read, they've done the e-learning, and then they'll read the workbook, they'll answer the questions, and those questions will, their answers will then be discussed with them. Okay, so I'm just going, and the last one of them is CQC, who they are and what to do if they turn up. Okay, so we're trying to back up e-learning and consolidate their understanding. So again, it's shaped by mandatory requirements. Lots of those are mandatory requirements. It's shaped by the requirements of the care certificate. But ultimately, it's about what we think they need to know, or we believe they need to know, giving consideration to those in order to deliver the service we're asking them of them. Okay, so that was the training bit, and then, you know, there's part of the care certificate which I really like, actually, and sort of it was introduced really with the care certificate, is that requirement for people to have their practice assessed before they're signed off. So does anyone want to open up on their process for that? So how are you assessing staff competence?
Nobody at the moment.
Okay. That's fine. I mean, I'm happy to go on. People can.
Is anybody involved in assessing staff competence?
On our audits, we have a discussion with them when they have their supervision. obviously we have questions again, and we discuss issues. 6-week reviews, we do that as well.
Yeah,
Like
okay,
the
yeah.
reviews. I'm thinking. What else? And obviously feedback from other staff members. That's kind of
Yeah,
an observation, recorded observation. So
this is the absolutely, those other things and the feedback are really sort of important to informing your understanding. But this is about recorded observation, if you like. So you have a sort of a system for recorded observation.
Yes.
Yes.
Supervision log as well.
Yeah.
We have.
Yeah.
Mick, Amber says that she does the end of week reviews during the 6 weeks. Amber, do you mean you do a review at the end of every week?
Yeah, I do a one-to-one for all new staff members at the end of each week during the initial 6-week induction. Where we use a format of the induction based on the 6-week plan, and then we go into monthly supervisions for the rest of the 6-month probation period.
Okay. Good. Okay, thank you.
Sally has said feedback from people assessing care and support can work really well where possible.
Can you, sorry, Kelly, can you just?
Yeah, just directly gaining feedback. So if you might be out doing a competence check, an observation check on a worker, if that person's able to contribute, asking them some questions about the care that they receive from that worker.
Right, yes, yeah.
Yeah, but obviously it can be quite difficult if that person has communication needs. But just a really good way. And I know doing a lot of assessing, observing competence. In my experience, at the end of the observation, I'd have a little chat with the person, access care, just to find out and add that as sort of additional sort of evidence.
Well, it's critical in a way, isn't it? Because they're the person, the end user, if you like, of that, that staff member's service. So yes, I do. The other thing I think is if they're doing things, giving people reassurance and praise, some of those positive workplace culture, when they're getting it right. Actually, thank you. That's what we're looking for, more of that sort of thing. So when they're on the right track, just making sure that they're very clear that that's what you expect of them. I mean, we have a sort of competency assessment framework, which is basically, I talked about those 12 service standards earlier, and each of them broken down. So that's hardwired into those. So someone will be observed answering the telephone, or record keeping, or we'll get feedback about how their relationships with other staff members, their attitudes and behaviours. So everything that's covered in those service standards, apart from medication, which we do separately, is included in this. So their understanding, if you like, of food preparation, nutrition and hydration. So because that's our expectations, that's our culture. Those standards are what we expect. So we're trying to make sure that we're observing and assessing in relation to what we expect.
And I think just to add, Mick, to what you were saying, especially in line with the care certificate, most organisations do have regular competency checks. Mick, and they do align those to sort of specific areas of service delivery. So as you've just given some examples, administering medication might be helping someone with who needs support with a hoist. But those service standards that you can set yourself, most often 9 out of 10 times relate to the care certificate standards as well.
There's I found the care, and it is the 9 out of 10 times actually. I found it a really, when developing all our service standards, that was, you talked about those workbooks. They were one of my key references. So whilst I've couched it and developed in terms of concise guidance for our staff, there was always a good half an eye on what the care certificate needed us to cover.
Yeah, but I always say, having done a lot of work with the care certificate, when you're doing your assessments, your observations, think very holistically. If you think about one key task, such as assisting somebody with moving and assisting, you see so much within that one scenario, how they communicate with the person, what records they're checking and what records they're recording, health and safety, equality, independence. Yeah, so always think holistically.
Yeah. And there's a lot you can cover in observation.
Yeah.
Natasha says that they do spot checks.
Yeah, I've just mentioned here the spot checks as well. So yes, certainly I think in any setting, but dom care, it's a sort of an absolute requirement, isn't it? Because often staff are either working on their own or doubled up with a colleague. So having a supervisor or a manager or care coordinator come and just sort of check in and make sure that they're doing it okay. And then actually picking up on Sally's point, the two staff or the staff member can go on to their next call, and the supervisor could then have a conversation with the client and actually just make sure that things are going okay from their perspective.
Raj has also put on, he said, feedback from service users, supervision, spot checks, and proof of learning assessments.
Okay.
Raj, do you want to
open up on proof of learning assessments?
Oh yes, proof of learning assessments, when staff, when they have their trainings and everything, then they do like a few questions like assessments, and then even though they are doing their e-learning, we will get paperwork from the office to say this is what staff need to fill and see if whatever training they had, if they know the answers for these questions.
Okay, so
that's to make sure. That's
a bit like our need to know important stuff handbook, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm just slightly mindful of the time, so I might I'd quite like us to finish out at 1 if we can. So we've got about 10 minutes to get there. So so I'm just going to sort of bear that in mind as I proceed. So our medication administration, and we have sort of training and sign off is a separate process from the main staff competency handbook. So we do it, but the timing of it is sometimes different. So we've sort of we developed it separately, but it sort of works that way. Okay, so we've talked quite a lot about the induction process, and we then put this into a sort of framework, if you like, so pull it all together in, and then it's around the probation period. So that's sort of a key part of that. So this I will try and move through at pace. Someone was talking about the meeting at 3 weeks, 6 weeks. I think it might have been you, Amber. And we have something similar. So this is just sort of going through that. So it's paperwork, it's a framework that actually is gone through with the new starter by their induction mentor, which once complete, it sort of walks them effectively through their probation process. So just this, imagine the documents and these sorts of things. So it's got details of when they did their initial training, tour of services, shadow shift. So that sort of information is captured there. So I'll have an introductory meeting on day 1. So that's sometimes they'll end up doing their training before that, but often it's day 1. Very early on, they will meet with their induction mentor. And this is sort of an orientation meeting, so this will be captured. So when it was, there'll be a series of things to go through. So it's a welcoming meeting, those sorts of things, and also an explanation of the process. What I liked, I think it might have been you, Amber, saying that because we don't do what you do, but I think what you do is good, providing that sort of 6-week checklist in advance. So we're sort of doing a bit of that here, but I think this is a bit more cumbersome than the way you do it. So I quite like what you said about that. So but we do talk, day 1, we do talk them through a process. So about our service standards and how to access them, that they're going to have their competency assessed against those standards, about that important stuff, what they need to know resource, and that they're going to have a series of questions asked to them. They have to answer those in relation to that resource. That if they pass those 2 things and they do those successfully, then they'll be awarded the care certificate. They'll know, they'll be introduced to our employees handbook and told where to get it. Same with our service user handbook. This is the thing, Karen, about it's just for fun, the questionnaires. So there's Belbin's team roles. a learning styles one, communication styles questionnaire, and a personality type questionnaire. So that's the sort of this is where we introduce that. Because we then have a week 6 supervision meeting. That doesn't mean that nobody talks to them from week 1 to week 6, but this is part of a sort of formal process, formal sort of reviewing process, if you like. So we do the week 1 and we do the week 6. And so we're reviewing the answers to those questionnaires and discussing their responses, finding out about the service standards, how are they finding them, looking at the sort of where the assessment of their competency has got to that point. Reviewing their answers to the sort of important stuff, what they need to know resource. We break that down into 2 sections, so they could quite easily complete one. They should have completed at least one of them by week 6. Again, do they have, just touching base about the employee's handbook and the service user handbook. Introducing now the house orientation guides. So how many of those have they read over COVID? Generally people have been much more confined to one service. Historically, they might have worked over more, 2 or 3. Medication competency. Are they, this is week 6. Are they ready to start that process? So that's a question we will sort of talk to them about. Often people come to us with sort of flexible working requests, and there's some agreement in place, so it's an opportunity to touch base in relation to that as well. Is it still working for both parties? So then we'll have, so that's week 6, so that's that initial thing. Then week 12, so we have another meeting at week 12, so again a sort of formal meeting, a formal review of their induction and probation. So we're basically at this stage we're seeing whether we can get them signed off the care certificate. So have they successfully answered those knowledge questions? Have they had their competency assessed in all relevant areas? Can they be awarded their care certificate? So that's what we're aspiring to do at that stage. And you're also using this section, or the mentor is, to complete their so this is a midterm. So after 12 weeks, look, that's 3 months, midterm probation review. So we double up that meeting, if you like. So care certificate hopefully awarded, midterm probation review. So also, have they familiarized themselves with the house? Any more guides? Yeah, I won't go through it all, but if they didn't do medication competency before, are they ready for it now? Flexible working still happening. So in terms of midterm probation review, so this just break down in terms of, are they on track to complete their successfully complete their probation? Question 1. And if there are concerns, have they been sort of outlined exactly what the concerns are and what the expectations are in terms of, for them to pass? Okay, so there's space for both of those things. And then the final bit is about, if there are concerns, have we told them that actually if their probation could be extended beyond 24 weeks if those concerns aren't addressed? Or they may actually, potentially we could review their suitability for the role. So just giving them a heads up that actually, the probation period is, is an important thing. Is when we make sure that they're the right, we're the right fit for them and they're the right fit for us. And we could extend if things aren't as we need them to be. So in week 18, so we're doing these every 6 weeks. So hopefully you're most of the way through Pilgrim's probation period, or 3/4 of the way through. Sometimes people don't complete their care certificate by week 12. That does happen. So if not, then it should be done here. Again, we're looking at medication competency and whether you're still, have you finished it? Do you need to start it? Again, we're looking at flexible working. Again, the same things in terms of probation, are they on track? And then week 24, so you're reviewing again. So at this stage you're trying to sign people off probation ideally. So you've had, what's this week? Yeah, 4th meeting after an initial meeting. So you've hopefully gone on a bit of a journey with them. They've followed or gone through various activities and expectations. Hopefully you've, in that process, you've moved them, you know, to where you need them to be. So, you know, it's 6 months down the line, you know, are they good to go? So hopefully that, you know, they've flown through and they're told at this meeting that they successfully passed their probation. If not, they've talked about, like, you know, the concerns, which they should have been warned about. We shouldn't be throwing in concerns at the, you know, the 11th hour. If there are concerns, they're likely, very likely, to be picked up earlier. And actually, if there are concerns, people don't necessarily make it through to this, you know, at this stage. Actually, quite often, well, not quite often, that's probably putting it a bit strong, but, you know, I do know of occasions where concerns have risen, and actually, you know, there was no 2024 meeting. There may, you know, there might have been a 6, if that, sort of a 6-week meeting. So just at the end, so it's important, and one of the points that's always been made to me, and I believe it's still the case, is that you can extend the probation for 3 months, but don't extend it for 6 months. So basically, if you need to extend a probation, only extend it for 3 months, because after that, people's employment rights after a year, they change. Now, I don't know if that's still the case, but my understanding it is the case. So, and also, if you were going to, you know, and we haven't terminated anybody's employment at this stage, but should that happen, then your contract, generally ours, gives only a week's notice. So the notice periods during the probation period are less than they are outside that or beyond that. Okay, I'm going to go really quick through this last bit. So we talked, I mean, I probably can't remember them all. So I'm not even going to try, actually, in case I get it wrong. But the last thing on the list, right at the beginning, on what we're going to do today, was canvassing staff feedback, and I think it's really important to do that. So what, you know, what, just tell us about this whole process. How's it been for you? Has it worked for you? Yeah, so we need to get it right for ourselves, but we also need to get it right for them. Vital in a really difficult recruitment climate to keep your staff turnover down and do all you can to have them remain with you. Okay, so just flying through, just the idea. I've turned this into a survey monkey now, but basically I'm not going to go through everything, but you know, we're touching base with them about the e-learning. Was it effective? We asked, you know, we are asking them whether it was effective. So the in-house inductions, we're asking them about them. Any suggestions about how those things might be improved? Stuff about shadow shifts, time to read their care and support plans, etc. Opportunity to ask questions. So all those things in our process that we wanted them to do, we're now asking them directly about, well, did we do that and did it work? Service standards, our important staff resource. Were they aware that basically they were going to assess their workplace competency against those service standards? Were they aware that if they did all the relevant bits, they'd get the care certificate? Touch base about employee handbook and service user handbook and the Belbin and learning style exercises. Medication competency. Did you find your induction supervisor mentor supported you effectively? Were they clear with you in relation to your progress? And then just some things that they went well, things they thought could go better. I don't know, yeah, and any further suggestions. So basically, in a nutshell, I think, yeah, that's my take on induction and probation. So thank you for your contributions. I hope that was helpful. As I say, there's not one way to do this. There was comments that you've made that I've written down that I thought were really helpful. Maybe there's comments that I've made that you've written down and thought were helpful. That's, you know, then we've got a win-win. I will put some of those resources up in the Aspiring Managers Network resource area. I probably won't do it immediately, but I'd quite like to get them up there before the next session, which is on the 4th of October, and it relates to CQC monitoring, oversight and quality assurance. Any questions?
Not at the moment.
Oh,
Anybody? I think somebody was going to say something. No?
might have been me.
No. Zoe said thank you very much.
Just thank you very much.
All right. Well, I hope that was helpful, and I hope it was sort of pitched at the right sort of level. Yeah. So let's do this journey together. I'm looking. Yeah, I like doing stuff like this. I hope we can sort of all learn from each other.
Yeah. Hopefully everybody will be joining us next time.
Yeah.
It'd be lovely.
Yes, there's quite a few people signed up. Actually, we've got sort of I don't know, 40 plus, I think. So
Oh, gosh.
I will go out to people again. But I do also know what it's like at times. It's someone goes sick, and what do you do?
Yeah. It's always difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you do your best.
Okay. All right. All the best to you.
Hang on, before you go, Natasha's just asked, just wondering if you do take into consideration the learning styles and how easy this is when you are dealing with a large group of people, staff.
Can you, I mean,
Yeah, Natasha.
I think, oh no, yeah, just open up, Natasha, so I make sure I understand the question.
Yeah, I'm asking if you personally do consider the different learning styles when it comes to training staff, and then how easy is it to implement when you're dealing with a large group of people?
Okay, I think my answer is that so we understand about their learning, so gaining some insight into their learning styles is helpful. Do we then tailor what we do for each individual based on their learning style? No, we don't. Okay. But we at least understand that that's not a great way for them to learn. But what we try and do, so I talked a bit about the workbooks or questioning and answering, those sort of conversation-based stuff. So they may still need to do the e-learning and actually not enjoy it and not get much out of it. But if we then follow it up with something else, then, so then hopefully we're sort of supplementing it with something that works better for them. Some of the discussion-based stuff, I think, yeah, I mean, people are either they're readers or writers, or they're doers. Some people like watching videos. Some people, so we do. It's not perfect, but I think we do try and mix up the styles a bit. So having those conversation-based stuff. Someone talked about having a conversation at the end of the team meeting, relating training to your actual staff, to your actual clients. I think that can be a really good way of, supporting somebody to understand something when the e-learning was of limited value.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So it's not an exact science, but I think that having the awareness is better than not.
Okay,
I would argue.
Thank you.
All right, Natasha. Okay. All right. Yes, that is all, folks.
Thanks, everybody.
And I will see you hopefully on the 4th of October. Okay.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.